Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the one habit that you need to build in order to improve your relationships forever. And the best part is you can literally start doing this right after watching this video and you'll immediately notice your relationships improve. You'll see that your friends, your family, your coworkers, even your partner will start to trust you more with information. They'll start to want to talk to you more, want to be around you. They'll start confiding in you more and you'll feel more valued by them. Okay, so what are we actually talking about? What is this habit? This habit is actually how you respond to people when they share good news with you. There are 4 ways in which you could respond. 3 of them are not so good. In fact, one of them is pretty bad. And then one of the 4 ways is the optimal way, like the best way to respond. If you use that way of responding and if you start responding in that way, you'll immediately improve your relationships and that will last forever. The first time I actually heard of this concept was from Cory Muscara. He's like an ex-monk and like a meditation mindfulness teacher. You check out his podcast called Practicing Human. I'll put a link in the description below, but it's like really cool. So let me actually give you the 4 ways of responding so you have an overview before we dive deeper into each one. So the first one is passive destructive. The second one is passive constructive. The third one is active destructive. This is the worst one. And the last one, which is the best one, the one I want to cultivate, is the active constructive way. Okay, so let's go through them one by one. The passive destructive way of responding when someone shares good news with you is something like this. So for example, if someone is telling you, oh, I'm going to start a business, like I've decided, I'm just going to go for it. And that person telling you this is like really excited. They're really pumped. They're looking forward to this whole new adventure in their life. And they're telling you this good news. And then if you're responding in the passive destructive way, you'll be like, oh yeah, oh, well, about time. I started my business like 3 years ago. Like that kind of passive destructive way of reacting where you're like kind of dismissing the other person. You're making them feel like their news is not really newsworthy. It's almost like, whatever, I did that years ago. It's no big deal. Kind of dismissing what they have to say and their excitement. It's also making the other person feel like what they're doing is not as important or as significant. It just makes them feel crappy, really. And it makes them feel less inclined to share news with you in the future just because of your reaction. If you're reacting in the passive destructive way, also you tend to go into your own story. For example, it's like, oh yeah, well, I started mine years ago. Back then I had to do this and this and it was so annoying, and back then the marketing was so blah blah blah. And it's like you go into your own story. You're taking away from the other person's experience. Okay, so let's move on to the second way of responding, which was the passive constructive way. So here you're still kind of like low energy, passive, but what you're saying is more positive compared to the previous option. So for example, when someone tells you, oh, I'm starting a new business, I'm so excited, it's gonna be amazing, like can't wait, then you're like, that's cool, good for you, nice. And you leave it at that. Like you don't ask any further questions, you don't share the enthusiasm of the other person. You're kind of like, okay, well, that's nice, like good for you, like I guess that's cool, like we'll see, like no big deal type of thing. Like you're not really excited. Even though you're saying something positive and something nice, like, oh yeah, that's cool, like, oh, good for you. That's technically positive, but it's not really making the other person feel like you're happy for them or you're excited. So now let's move on to the third option, which is the worst one, which is the active destructive way of responding. So in that scenario, if someone is telling you, oh, I'm gonna start a business, I'm so excited, I can't wait, it's gonna be so cool, etc. They're really excited. And then the active destructive way of responding would be like, are you serious? Like, no way, you're starting a business? Like, in this economy, have you really thought this through? You can't manage your own finances, let alone starting a business. You see, like, it's an active, destructive kind of way of responding, where you're bursting out with all the questions and all the negativity and all the doubts that you have about the news that were shared with you. And of course, that makes the other person feel like, oh my God, like, whoa, you're really excited, and then you're bombarded with that kind of negativity and negative energy. Of course, it makes the person sharing the news not want to share any more news with you, right? And of course, like, it's understandable sometimes why people react that way. It's often because they really care about the person sharing the news and they don't want to see them hurt. They don't want to see them suffer through loss or disappointment or failure or something like that. But often that type of response comes from the personal fear of the person responding. So for example, that person saying, oh, have you thought this through? Like in this economy, like you can't manage your own finances. What if you fail? What if you lose all your money? That actually comes from the fears of the person saying that. It's their own beliefs that could happen and their own fears around that happening. And of course, they want to protect the other person that they care about. But that's not the way to do it. That's not the right approach. Because even if you did say those things and did react in that way, the person sharing the news with you won't necessarily be like, oh yeah, you know, you're right. Like that makes total sense. Like, thank you so much for bringing that up to my attention. Like, you're totally right. Like, I will not start a business just because you said all these things right now. Of course, they're not going to react that way. If anything, they'll shut off. They'll create a wall in their mind between you and them. And that's it. Like, they won't really share any more news with you, especially not around this particular topic that you reacted so negatively to. So it's just something to really keep in mind and watch yourself. Okay, and let's finally move on to number 4 of the 4 ways in which you could respond. And that one is the best one. That's the habit that you want to build. And that is the active, constructive way of responding. So in this way, when someone tells you, oh my God, like I'm starting a business, I'm so excited, I can't wait, and they're like really like actually highly energetic about it, then your way of reacting is to match their energetic level and come up to match that excitement and that enthusiasm for what they're saying. So for example, you could say, oh my God, like no way, like that's so cool, I'm so excited for you, that sounds amazing, I can't wait to hear more, tell me more, when are you starting, what are you gonna be selling, how did you decide, like etc, etc, etc. So you start asking about what they've just shared because you actually care and because you're genuinely interested in what they're sharing with you. You're kind of matching their level of enthusiasm and their energy. So like I think that's really important, is like bringing yourself up to the same level of enthusiasm for the thing that the other person has as well. And in this way, the other person is like, oh my God, like, yeah, it's super nice. Like, I'm going to be selling this and that, and I'm starting there, and that's how I decided. And like, they start to like get deeper into the news and into sharing more with you. And then that way you become more reliable, more trustworthy, more easy to talk to for that person. And thus you become more likable. They are more likely to share news with you in the future because of how you reacted, because you supported them and they felt held and they felt like they could trust you with this information, right? And we all know how that feels when someone is like genuinely excited about what we're telling them and wants to know more. We're like, wow, like this is so cool. It's so nice to talk to that person. So that's the one habit that you can build, and you can start doing this like right away, like right after watching this video. Next time someone tells you something, even if it's not like the most exciting thing ever, even if they're like mildly excited about the thing, you can still like match that level of excitement and be like, oh, no way, like that's so nice. Like what's up with that? Like tell me more. And really, like everybody loves being asked questions about the things that are going on in their life. And by doing that small thing, you will become more liked, like you'll become more valued as a friend, family member, partner. So here are some practical tips for how you can actually start to implement that in your life. Number 1 is you need to cultivate some self-awareness. Self-awareness around how you respond to people, how you show up when you communicate with someone else. And the easiest way to do that to begin with is to write down, like every time after you talk to someone and let's say you part ways, just open your phone up, open notes and write down, okay, this date with this person, they told me this and I reacted this way. It doesn't even have to be like so detailed, just like one sentence. And this way you start to like become more aware of how you're responding, and it's often easier to reflect back after the event, after the response. But slowly through this practice, you'll begin to build that self-awareness into the present moment when you're actually talking to the person, and you'll be able to remember like, oh, how am I responding, or how am I about to respond to that person's good news? And you catch yourself in the moment, and then you bring your energy level up to match the other person's energy level as well. And bear in mind that this practice can be a little bit challenging with the people that are closest to you because you care the most about them. Especially like if you're a parent and you have kids, it can be like a tendency for you to respond with caution, with questions that are a bit like challenging, like, oh, have you really thought about this? Like, are you sure this is a good idea? I'm not sure. Like, have you thought about the risks? Like all these kind of like a bit negative questions. And that's normal because you're the parent and you're trying to take care of your kid. But at the same time, think about how that's making the kid feel, like in terms of their decision. So it's always, no matter the person you're talking to or the situation, it's always best to approach the response with that active, constructive way of responding where you're enthusiastic, and then later, like a day later or even later that day or a week later, whatever, but not in that moment. The point is later, you can then bring up any questions or concerns you might have or things that you wish to know more about in terms of what might go wrong or stuff like that. This way you're not squashing the other person's enthusiasm in the moment. Also, notice whether you're conditioned as a person sharing news, whether you're conditioned to only share news with certain people and avoid sharing news with other people. Ask yourself, why is that? For example, if you're kind of reluctant to share news with your parents until maybe they're set in stone or the thing has already happened, ask yourself, like, why is that? You might not know the answer, but just starting that inquiry will really help you to become more self-aware. And then you can actually choose to change that pattern if you wanted to. So only by becoming more self-aware can we actually create change. If you're unconscious about the way you live your life and the way you talk to other people, then you'll never be able to create change because you don't really know that you're doing something. So become conscious, become aware of the way you respond to other people, and also with the way you share information with other people, who you share it with and who you don't share it with, and why. And then you can decide whether you want to change that or not. Okay, so to recap, the one habit that you want to build in order to improve your relationships forever is to respond to good news in an active, constructive way, which means that you respond with a level of enthusiasm that matches the level of enthusiasm of the person sharing the good news. And you're as excited as them about the thing that they're telling you, and you're like, oh my god, that's so cool. You want to know more, you ask follow-up questions, you ask them to tell you more information, and this way the other person feels more appreciated and they feel like they can tell you anything in the future. And this will make you more trusted, more liked, more sought after, and more valued, and you feel closer to the people around you, to the people that matter most to you, and also you'll minimize conflict overall. So I would say it's a big win-win. And also, it doesn't require much investment on your part. Like, it's not the hardest thing ever. You can literally start doing this right now. So yeah, I hope this was helpful for you. If you love content about self-development and personal growth, please feel free to follow my channel. I would love to create more videos around those topics. And if you want to know more, maybe how to overcome your fear, some of those fears that we talked about around what could go wrong for the people you love, then you might want to check out this video right here where I talk about how to overcome your fears. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.